My name is Manda Whitney, and I am an anti-money laundering investigator and certified fraud examiner. Money laundering is taking the proceeds of crime and disguising their source somehow, and that can be used through like depositing at different places, transferring it to different bank accounts, like doing as much as possible to confuse where it actually came from. And that could be for any crime, from like drug trafficking to human trafficking to fraud. And so fraud falls in there, and so like it's adjacent to money laundering. Money laundering is what happens after the fraud occurs, right? You want to be able to like get the funds out of there and make sure that nobody can trace them. So what the bank does, is basically, yes, like you say, somebody's activity might get flagged in the bank, and that could be through a number of ways, either through an algorithm that can detect it automatically, or maybe a branch staff notices that a customer is acting very strangely, and they might, basically alert the bank about it, and from there we triage it and, try and answer the questions, and then it comes to me basically to investigate a bit further to determine if what that person is doing is reasonable or not, and if it's not, then we basically report it to the government, to FinTrack, who's our regulator. And then FinTrack, the big government regulator, takes all of those reports and makes them available to law enforcement, which is what they can then use to help track down criminals, arrest them if necessary, or use them in court, use that as evidence in court as well. As to what can flag? A lot of things, right? It could be a giant deposit, it could be like, oh, suddenly let's say you developed a gambling addiction, and suddenly you see all these purchases going on in your account that weren't there before, and so that just automatically kind of flags, and that's what we have to look into. Some random person got some inheritance could flag, right? Because it's just simply out of your normal pattern of activity, right? And that doesn't mean that it's suspicious automatically. That's what the investigation is for, right? Can we reasonably determine where this money came from, why it's there, what it's being used for? Does that make sense? And if it does, it's like, great, fantastic, enjoy your life. And if it doesn't, then, we move on from there. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was surprised how much, like, a creative background can be helpful in this job. It isn't all just pure analysis and investigation. There is a certain amount of, you need to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes, right? You need to be able to put yourself in their mind and to try and think about why they're doing what they're doing. Online, a lot of it is gaming. Gaming's my big thing. It's been a thing since I was a kid, whether it's video games or board games. And lately it's been escape games, so that's been my big hobby that I have sunk all of the money I now make into. So that's a big one. It's always been an escape for me. I love the game medium and its interactivity and feeling a part of the story. Escape rooms came about in Canada about 2015, I think. I'm gonna be bad enthusiast. I can't remember when the very first actual game came out. I think it was like 2010 or something in Japan. And basically escape rooms are kind of like a live action puzzle video game. In the early 2000s, there was like online ones. There's little flash games that you could play, and I fell in love with those, like escape the room type games. And then someone said, why don't we make that in real life? Why don't we have a room full of puzzles that groups of people can come in to solve? And it blew up pretty immediately once it got here. Like, I think the first room opened in 2015, and by 2016 in Toronto alone, there were 60 companies. And so once I discovered them, it was like, we played our first, and it very much felt like, oh my gosh, I'm playing all my favorite video games, but in real life. And to look at this game now, it wasn't anything really special. It was like actually probably a pretty terribly designed room. But when you're there, you're with your group of friends, and even just the act of like opening up a box like with a key or something just got us all excited. And gosh help you if there was like a secret passage to another room. We're like, oh my gosh, there's more! Look, a door just opened! And so like we were just hooked, and I think about that room a lot now. But we were hooked, and so once we did that, and because we were in Toronto, like we just started mainlining them. like crazy, and then from there we just got really hooked into the industry, and it has become my obsession over the last 10 years or so. I should keep count. I know approximately how many I've done. So I've done approximately 400 by this point. But I do have friends. I am not considered a super enthusiast at that point. There are people in the world who have done over 2,000 at this point. It's been really interesting to see a medium from its inception. Like, this might be a fad. Like, it still might be a fad. We're only like 10 years into escape rooms being created. They might fade away out of popularity and everything. There might be influences. But regardless, seeing something like an entertainment medium like this from the start, everybody wanted to be considered the expert in their field, right? So everybody had an idea of what makes a good escape room. And having been a part of many creative communities, it was kind of fun to see, especially the business people argue about it. And just, it's like, oh, people don't care about story, for example. They don't care. They just want to solve the puzzles. And I would pop in there and be like, no, they don't care about the story because you didn't make a good one. That's all. I'm like, and we haven't figured it out yet, right? Like, they don't care about the story because, like, if you think about, like, film when it first started, like, it was a technological advancement, right? It was a cool thing. People saw a train coming down the track. That was all they needed. It was like, oh my god, it's the most amazing thing ever. And then when you had people who grew up with that technology, same thing with video games, come into their own, get into their formative years, that's how they wanted to express themselves, their stories, is through that same technological medium. And that's when you start to figure out, hey, if I turn the lens this way, that angle kind of conveys this feeling. And so it takes time for a medium to mature. And so we're kind of seeing it now. Hello and welcome to Room Escape Divas, your podcast on everything escape room. It kind of started from like us all meeting up after escape rooms and ranting about them because we played some amazing things and we played some terrible things, and us getting to like hack it apart was like just as much fun as actually playing the room. And we were like, I think it was my one friend who was just like, yeah, we should do this on a podcast. We should share it. We should have other people listen to us rant. Doesn't everyone have a podcast? We could do it. And so, sure, yeah, we got this crappy little Zoom mic, like probably the cheapest one you could get, one directional, 4 of us crowded around a table, like speaking into this mic. If you listen to our first podcast episodes, they are terrible. So terrible, like sound-wise, direction-wise, we were all kind of unhinged and ranting, much like I am right now. The other reason we were doing it is, again, we were seeing these community posts about what makes a good escape room, and everyone had their own idea of it. And all of us came from different backgrounds, right? Like, my one friend was a puzzle designer, so he knew his crap about puzzles. Like, and he would get so angry when people would say, like, my escape room only has a 2% escape rate. I'm like, well, that means you have shitty puzzles. Sorry. If people can't solve your room, they're not going to have that much fun, and they're not going to come back. Like, believe it or not, that's a terrible business decision. And my other friend had a big business background, so, like, he knew that side of it. And I came from the creative world, like the narrative background. And so we thought, why don't we share some of our ideas? We're sitting here analyzing everything. Maybe it might be of value to somebody. And that also became when people started reaching out to us saying, like, oh, I have ideas too, like, or, oh, I, teach this at a university, or, like, oh, we've created this special escape room that no one's ever done before. And then we started having guests, and so it became less of us just ranting. That still definitely was there, and more of us becoming kind of like hey, let's try and advance the industry. Let's talk to people who are making these things, who can potentially, share their ideas with the world. And it was interesting for us, too, to see what everybody was doing out there and how the industry was advancing.